Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing my March wrap up. And let me tell you, I don't know that I've read this many books since high school, maybe. Now, granted, I did finish one of these um, this month that I had been reading for a long time, but most of these I started and finished in the month of March. So, pretty happy with my March reads. Won't always be like this, but we do have lots of books to talk about. So the first one is Jingle Bell Beard, and this one was like a 4-hour novella where we were following Jasmine, who was attempting to revive her PR career, and she was doing that through helping her ex-boyfriend's sister revive her family's business. And the family business is an inn, and so Jasmine is trying to do a lot of PR and try to bring a lot of business to the inn. And she ends up talking her ex-boyfriend Matt into coming down and helping. And Matt is an NHL player, and he's also trying to like revive his NHL career because right now he's kind of bench for injuries and he's a bit old. And so they end up helping each other sort of figure out their priorities. And I really liked it. I thought it was really well written. It's just a little too short for me. I didn't really feel super connected with the characters. I really liked their interactions, but I don't feel like I know them super well. And I think that's just the nature of it being a 4-hour audiobook. So I think that's just part of it. The second book that I finished was Of Fire and Blood. No, I always get it mixed up with George R. R. Martin's book, Of Blood and Fire. And this one is written by Ryan Cahill. And we're following this kid, Kellen. And it's him and his two friends, and they've sort of been kicked out of the nest from their little town that they grew up in. And they're teaming together with these strangers who kind of got them in trouble with the Empire. And they are on this journey, and they don't really have a clue where they're going or what they're doing. They just know that they can't really go home, so they might as well just stick it out with these strangers. And along the way, they meet some giants and they meet elves and they learn magic and they learn how to fight with swords and they really learn how to come into their own. And there are dragons involved. There is a dragon egg, and the Aragon similarities are so present. So present. And like I was obsessed with Aragon when I was a kid. Like I read it so many times, my book is like trashed. And there are so many similarities to Aragon, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's still well written. And I've heard that after the first book, it really starts to take a turn for its own, and there are a lot less similarities to Aragon moving forward. So I'm really looking forward to book two. I really enjoyed this one. It took me forever to read it just because I was prioritizing other things, and it wasn't that it wasn't good. Like I enjoyed my time with it. And I'm really looking forward to the second one. Sometimes I just suck, you know? The third book that I finished was Accidentally Amy by Lynn Painter. This one we follow Isabella Shea, and it starts off with her in a Starbucks, and she's running late for her new job. And she is going to be late if she waits for her coffee. Well, this girl, Amy, ordered the exact same coffee, and the barista is calling for Amy, and Amy never comes. So Isabella Shea just takes Amy's coffee and goes about her day. But she bumps into this guy, Blake, and he's really cute. And they have this little meet cute. And he thinks her name is Amy. And she gets to her job, and he's one of her bosses. So awkward. And he hates lying. He is like so against it. He's very moral and very by the book and the rules. And so she has a lot of convincing to do to get him to understand her side of it and to see that it's not that big a deal. But so they become friends, and they can't date because of the fact that like she reports to him. There's like one person in between them, but like she's on his team. And they develop this friendship, and the banter is fantastic. Like, they tease each other and they call each other names, and it's just, you know that it's not out of malice, that it's completely because they're just teasing. And they do so well together as friends, and he matches her energy, and she's got like this fun personality. Like, she is bold and flirty and daring and doesn't really care, and he's so like straight and narrow, and so they balance each other out very well. And just because like he's very straight and narrow doesn't mean that he doesn't match her in her goofiness, and he completely does. Oh, they're just so good. And Lynn Painter does a really good job with her storytelling. I thought they were super believable as friends, and then they do start a romance, and I think it was completely believable from the start. Oh my gosh. So this next one is The Devil Wears Prada. I don't remember who it's by. It's by like Laura something. And I read this one because in May I'm going to be discussing this in comparison with the movie. And oh my gosh, they're so different. So different. Like, you can't even hardly compare them because there are so many differences to the movie. And it was really good. Like, I really enjoyed everything that was in this book. It was just really weird because I was expecting certain things and they didn't happen, or they didn't happen the way that I thought they were going to happen. And it was a mind trip the whole time. But I had so much fun. So, the basic plot is the same, where we follow Andy and she wants to be a writer, and she gets hired on at Runway, which is a fashion magazine, and she's the assistant. And Emily is still the same. She's the other assistant that she's working with. But there are so many differences in the tasks that Miranda wants Andy to complete, and Miranda's incompetence with certain things is much more elaborated on, and how much Miranda like doesn't give them any clues. Like, there's a scene in the book where she asks Andy to find a restaurant to there was a newspaper that had a review of a restaurant, and she wanted to know the name of that restaurant. She didn't give Andy any indication of what restaurant it was, what paper it was written in, or even what state it was written in. And Andy had to figure it out. Like, it goes way more in depth in those pieces with the book. Um, I had trouble with her relationship with her boyfriend because that was the thing that was completely different. Like, his name wasn't even Nate, it was Alex, and they weren't living together, and it was so weird. But it was so much fun, and I think that it really showed their the splitting apart of their relationship really well. And there was much more to the story of her friendship with her friend Lily, which I thought was fantastic. And I think that the ending is, I sort of have issues with the ending just because she, it just, it wasn't what I wanted. It was still good, and she still stood up to Miranda, but it just wasn't the same. Otherwise, it was fantastic. It was so much fun. And I highly recommend the book if you can let go of the movie. If you can't let go of the movie, then maybe don't read it because it is so different. So, so different. But I had a great time with it. The only complaint that I have with the book is that Andy doesn't get very impressive with her job. In the movie, she gets super impressive with her job, but in the book, she doesn't. And without the movie, that wouldn't even be a complaint. Like, that would not even be a factor. That wouldn't even be anything at all. So, I mean, that's not really the book's fault. The movie did that to me. Okay, sorry if the angle changed a ton. My microphone died, so I had to get my second one. But so the next book that I finished in March was Dragon in Winter by Jonathan Mayberry. This is book 3 to the Kagan the Dam series, and what to say about this book? I loved the first two. Loved the first two. And I didn't love this one quite as much. And the only reason is because I love the first two because of Kagan. I loved his interactions with his friends and with his team. And we didn't get very much Kagan in this book. And it started with, so in, let me back up. In the first one, we get some perspectives of different people. In the second book, we get more perspectives of different people. And then in this book, we get so many different perspectives. And yeah, I read books all the time where you get different perspectives, but it wasn't that we were following the story from different people. We were following different people in order to see what Kagan was doing. Like, we'd follow these two guys and they would watch Kagan ride through town. So we knew that he'd come through town. Or we took the perspective of a cat when Kagan showed up where the cat was. Like, things like that. And I don't like that. I don't know why. It just didn't feel good to me. And so I had a hard time with this book because we kept doing that. Or we followed perspectives of his team, which is fine, but we were there a lot. And we followed the perspectives of his brothers, which were important. Like, their perspectives were important. We just followed them quite a lot. And I don't feel like it was all very necessary. So there's that. But the ending was pretty good. I liked the resolution and how everything kind of like came together. I just didn't like all the perspective jumping, and I think that that's why I didn't like this one nearly as much. It was just a narrative choice that didn't really work for me. But so, the summary of this book, or well, of the series as a whole. So Kagan, we follow early on in the first book, and he was waking up, and his empire had been completely taken over. He was drugged and partied, and he woke up, and the children he was in charge of, and the palace that he was supposed to be protecting. I mean, he was on his off night, but like he's sworn soldier to protect them. All murdered, family murdered, just taken over. And so he kind of wanders the countryside for a little while, getting drunk and not really doing much. And then he decides that he's going to get revenge. And so this is his journey of trying to build a team and figure out how he's supposed to take on a guy who is basically a god. Because we have magic in this world, and that's how this guy was able to take over an entire nation in a single night. And it talks a lot about how like magic is changing the nation, and like plants are a color that the nation can't even like explain because that color doesn't exist in their world, because the worlds are kind of meshing, and there's supposed to be a dragon, and they don't know what's happened to this dragon, but they do know that if this dragon dies and all the magic in the world dies with it. And up until like the third book, we don't know if it's better for the dragon to die or if it's better for the nation for the dragon to live. And so they kind of go back and forth with that, and they kind of go back and forth with who this dude is that took over a nation and how he came to be and all of these things. And I loved the banter, and I love Kagan, and I just I wish I had liked this third one a little bit more. Okay, so the next book I finished was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. In this book, we follow Liz, and she is getting ready to go to prom and graduate high school and do all of these things. And her childhood crush comes back to town. And so now she's like, oh my gosh, it is meant to be that we go to prom together. And so she grew up with this dude, and he thinks that she is still the weird little kid that she was because she was obsessed with romance movies because her mom was. And so she would sort of be like pretending like she's in her own romance movie, and she would act that way. Or she would put on these plays in the front yard and make all the neighborhood kids participate. And she was always having some sort of soundtrack to her life, like she was in a movie. And So she desperately wants him to go to prom with her. And so she recruits West, who is her next door neighbor, to help her get this guy, Michael. And West, being her neighbor, they grew up together as well, but they didn't get along as much. He like messed with her Barbie dolls and messed with her a lot and teased her. And when they were both driving, they would fight over this parking spot out in front of the houses. And like they would call the police if the car was parked there for too long, or they would put stuff in the parking spot so that the other person couldn't park there. And so she really had to humble herself to ask him for this favor. And so she made a deal with him. And so he takes her out to parties and hanging out with his friends, which includes Michael. And he's trying to help her not seem so weird. And they end up becoming really good friends. And she ends up lying to a lot of people in her life outside of Wes. And I loved her interactions with Wes, and I loved the dates. Oh my gosh. This poor girl, she could not have a successful date at all with Michael around. Like, awful things happened to her when he was around. And, oh, it was so embarrassing. I was embarrassed for her. And so I loved this book. And Liz's mom died when she was like 14, 13, 14. And so now she's having all of these milestones happening, and her mom's not going to be there. And she's feeling a lot of that grief, and she holds a lot of that inside and doesn't really talk about it. And you get to see her process through some of that grief. And oh, it was just so good. I really enjoyed this story. Like I said before, Lynn Painter does a fantastic job with her characters, and I loved every second of this book. It was just so much fun. The next one that I finished was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. In this book, we follow Alexis and Daniel, and we get dual perspective in this one. And Alexis is a ER doctor, but her family is like a legacy of doctors. Like high class, they've all like generations of doctors. And they have this legacy of being at this one hospital for like the last 125 years. And they're always like high up in the administration. And Alexis is basically the black sheep of the family just because she's an ER doctor and she's not like a neurosurgeon or a surgeon or plastic surgeon. Like, she is an ER doctor and she is not good enough. And so she is trying to overcome a lot of those feelings of not being good enough for her parents, who are highly critical of her. And she has this ex, Neil, who is garbage, like absolutely garbage. He was very controlling and like manipulating and verbally abusive and things like that. And we get introduced to the story when they've already broken up, and she is trying to come to the other end of that, where come to the other side of that, where she's moved on from this relationship and she's kind of healed from it, but her family won't let it go at all. Like, her dad still golfs with Neil. They still have him over for dinner, and like they are still highly involved with Neil, and they want her to get back together with him, even though he cheated on her, and that's how the whole relationship ended. And on the other half of that, we follow Daniel. And Daniel works with his hands, and he runs an inn, and he's the mayor of this little tiny town. And he's a really good guy, and he really cares about his people, and people really care about him. But he doesn't have a lot of money. Like, he's just an average dude living life, and he's got tattoos, and he has a baby goat, and he has friends who have pigs and a farm, and he's just your everyday guy. And Alexis meets him when her vehicle kind of ends up in a ditch, and he like tows her out. And she really likes him, and wants to be with him, but he would never fit into her world, and her family would never accept him. And you get to see the consequences of that because her brother did something against dad's wishes, and so now he's no longer part of the family. And so Alexis has like these really high stakes of like, my entire family will just turn their backs on me if I date him. And so they have to navigate this whole situation. And it was really good. I loved every bit of it. I loved Alexis and Daniel together. And I loved that they just really connected. And Alexis, you get to watch Alexis grow from this people pleasing person to being strong on her own 2 feet. And I love that kind of thing. Okay. And so the last book that I finished was The Help. And this story follows Skeeter, who is a white journalist, and it follows Aibileen and Minnie. And Aibileen and Minnie are black maids. And I don't know the time period of this, but it's back in the South when the blacks and whites were pretty segregated. And the whites were like, you can't even like use my bathroom because you carry diseases, sort of thing. And so we're following these 3 women, and the book starts out with Aibileen and Minnie and how they're just living their lives as maids. And Skeeter is coming home from college and she's wanting to be a journalist. And she is sort of encouraged by this editor to find a story that is very personal to you that kind of pushes the boundaries. Like, what is a unique idea that nobody else is talking about? And so Skeeter decides to write about these maids that she's grown up with. And in this time period, nobody wants to do that. Like, she has a hard time with these maids because she wants to get some interviews with these maids about what it's like working for these white families, and nobody wants to do it. Like, they live in Jackson, Mississippi, deep south, where segregation is very big and you just don't interact and you don't talk about how awful it is to work for the white families to the white families. Like, you just don't do that. And so a lot of these maids are terrified to talk to Skeeter. And Skeeter finally gets one to talk to her and tell her story. And they slowly start getting more and more of these maids to tell their stories. And Skeeter is working on writing this book. And so then you get the whole perspective of Skeeter learning about these people and how her white friends have kind of turned on her because she's different. And you also get to see, once they finish the book, like, what happens. And I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a lot of fun to see like those different perspectives. And I love the fact that we got to see the white perspective and we got to see the black perspective on things because we followed everybody's perspective. And within the society, we got to see different perspectives because so like Skeeter is friends with Hilly and friends with Elizabeth, and Aibileen is Elizabeth's maid. So you get to see what's going on with Elizabeth when Skeeter's not there. And then you also get to see what's happening with Hilly because she's interacting with Elizabeth. And so the maids kind of like get to see all of these things. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I really loved the discussion of how do we make change happen and how do we be the first one to be brave enough to do that. And I'm really excited to watch the movie. This one is going to be my movie book comparison in April. And so I'm excited to watch the movie. I've watched the movie once before, but I don't remember anything about it except for one scene. And I'm really interested to see how that scene plays out in the movie now that I've read the book because I remember it happening differently in the movie. And so I'm really interested. But so yeah, that is all the things that I have finished. Um I have been reading, what's it called? The Veiled Throne by Ken Liu. And this one is massive. Okay, so I'm only a little over 100 pages in. This one is going to be my vlog for April. This is book 3 of the Dandelion Dynasty, and currently we are following some new characters as they sort of navigate new alliances and they are navigating the new world because we just went to war, and so this is kind of like the aftermath of all of that so far. Really enjoying it. I'm excited to get deeper in when we start like outmaneuvering each other more. It's the best part of Ken Liu. He does that so well. But so, I was also reading The First Law. And let me tell you, I was duped. Okay? I've been listening to the audiobook on YouTube, right? Well, it's an 11-hour audiobook, which I mean is fairly long. It's not the full audiobook. It's only about halfway. And I didn't know that. So I thought that I was close to finishing. And I finished the video today and it wasn't done. And so yeah, I'm still reading it. Let me show you where I'm at in this book. I'm like here. Somewhere right around in here. Where's my bookmark? Hang on. This is where I'm at. This is how much more I have to go. Like, what? The video said full audiobook. Excuse me, no, you're not. Not when I listen to all of you and I get halfway through the book. So now I have to finish this one and probably gonna have to physically read it because I don't have the audiobook for it. So there's that. But, anyways, let's talk about it. This is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This is the, what's it called? First Law trilogy. And we are following Logan, Giselle, West, and Glokta. And Logan is a barbarian from the north, and he's just kind of like bumbling around, runs into a wizard, and he just kind of follows the wizard around. And we're following Glokta, who is a torturer, was a prisoner of war turned torturer, actually. And he is trying to figure out all of these plots that people are plotting inside the town. And he doesn't like his job. Like, he really hates life, but he does it anyways because he knows that that's the winning side. And then Giselle is a pompous, arrogant, rich kid who is learning how to duel with a sword. And he's just like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. Why do I have to work hard? And he kind of gets pushed into that and gets challenged. And so you're seeing him have to like actually work for things. And then we have West, who is he's a nobody turned soldier. And now he's like I think he's a captain in the army. And you get to see him interacting with his sister, and she's kind of come into town because she doesn't have any friends, and he's worried about her, and she's a drunk. So, I mean, he really probably should worry about her. And the first book here, we're just following these characters living their everyday lives. So there's not really a whole lot of story to talk about. So it's basically just character driven. The first 3 are very character driven. Mostly this one. The second and third one have a little bit more plot, but not this first one. We're just chilling. But Joe Abercrombie does a really good job with his characters, and they're very morally gray, and they're just a lot of fun to follow around. And so yeah, if you can't tell, I'm a little bummed that my audiobook duped me. But so, anyways, what books did you read in March? Have you read any of these? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.